Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the show that cuts through the noise, stacks the sources, and gets you the insights you need fast. Have you ever just felt like communication is, well, tricky? You say one thing, someone hears something completely different. Or maybe you just feel like you misread a situation. We often look for easy answers, don't we? Simple rules, maybe those famous ratios, just to make sense of it all. But what if some of those rules, the ones everyone seems to know, aren't quite what they seem?
That's so true. We crave simplicity, but human interaction is just incredibly nuanced. It rarely fits into neat boxes. So today we're doing a deep dive into how communication actually works. We'll explore some different communication models, these frameworks that experts use to map it all out. And then, we're going to tackle one of the most famous and honestly most misunderstood rules, the 7-38-55 rule.
Right. Our mission today is to unpack these ideas, find the really practical stuff, and give you insights that can genuinely help you communicate better, day to day, at work, at home, wherever.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. What exactly are communication models? Think of them like blueprints, or maybe simplified maps for a really dynamic, complex process. They help us see where a conversation starts, how it flows, and maybe where things can go wrong. Dennis McQuail, a communication theorist, described a model as a kind of selective representation, could be words or a diagram of some part of how we share information, basically making something big and messy a bit more understandable.
A mental map. I like that. And there's this core question behind it all, isn't there, from Harold Lasswell?
Exactly. Laswell's question. Who says what to whom with what effect? It sounds simple, but it really guides almost everything in communication theory.
And knowing about these models, these maps, how does that help you listening right now?
Well, it gives you practical tools. We've all had those moments, haven't we? The email that went to spam, the comment taken the wrong way because the tone felt off. Understanding these models helps you look back at those misunderstandings. You can sort of analyze what happened, why it happened. And that helps you prepare better for the next time. You become a more deliberate communicator.
Okay, so if we're mapping communication, where did these maps even come from? The thinking has evolved quite a bit, right? From simple to complex.
Absolutely. It's a progression. We generally group them into three main categories: linear, interactive, and transactional models. They build on each other, moving from like a basic one-way street idea to something much more dynamic, where meaning is co-created.
Let's start with linear then, the one-way street.
The simplest concept. Communication flows in just one direction, sender to receiver, like tossing a ball. You see this logic applied a lot in things like marketing or PR, where the main goal is just getting a message out there.
And the oldest one goes way back to Aristotle.
Way back. Ancient Greece. Aristotle designed his model specifically for public speaking, how to be persuasive. His focus was all on the speaker delivering a message to a pretty passive audience. He talked about ethos, the speaker's credibility, pathos, the emotional connection, and logos, the logic.
The three pillars of persuasion.
Exactly. And he broke it down. Speaker, speech, occasion, audience, effect. Think of a great lecturer, maybe. The students are mainly there to absorb the key insight from Aristotle. It really puts the burden on the sender to craft that effective message.
But the big drawback.
No feedback. It's all one way. The audience is just receiving.
Okay, so moving on from Aristotle, still in the linear world, there's the Shannon-Weaver model. This has got a really interesting backstory.
It really does. Developed by mathematicians Claude Shannon and Warren Weaver at Bell Telephone Labs. During World War II, they were trying to solve engineering problems like how to get the clearest signal over telephone lines.
That applied to people talking too.
Yeah, they realized the principles were broader. And this model was a game changer because it introduced communication as a system. It had components. Sender, encoder, channel, decoder, receiver. A clear path. But the really groundbreaking part was adding the concept of noise.
Ah, noise, not just static on the line, right?
Exactly. Noise is anything unintended that messes with the message. It could be literal static, sure, but also mishearing something, a typo in an email, someone being distracted, anything that interferes.
So this model teaches us to think about what might be disrupting our message.
Precisely. Troubleshooting the channel.
Yeah.
And later, actually, Norbert Wiener added the idea of feedback. So the receiver's reaction could loop back to the sender, which makes a receiver feel a bit more involved.
Okay, like if a VP is briefing someone, but an assistant interrupts, that's the noise, and maybe mistakes happen because there wasn't a chance to immediately ask a question, get that feedback.
Perfect example. Lack of immediate feedback loop caused by noise.
So linear models are basically one way, maybe with a slight return path for feedback. What comes next? When does it become more of a conversation?
That brings us to the interactive models. Now we're talking two-way communication.
Mm,
But the key difference here is that the feedback is usually delayed. It's not instantaneous. Think about sending a text message or an email or even writing a letter back in the day. You send, you wait, they respond.
right. Not quite a real-time back and forth.
Exactly. And a really important new idea comes in here, the field of experience. This just means everyone brings their own background to the conversation. Your culture, your past experiences, your personal history. It all shapes how you create messages and how you interpret them.
Our personal filters again.
Yeah, we don't all see or hear things the same way because our fields of experience are different.
And the Osgood-Schramm model fits here.
It's a great example. What's unique about Osgood-Schramm is that there's no fixed sender or receiver. Both people are simultaneously encoding, decoding, interpreting. The roles are constantly shifting. It views communication as circular, continuous. The idea is that information itself isn't useful until it's actually put into a message and shared.
Like catching up with an old friend you haven't seen in years. You're both telling stories, asking questions, interpreting, constantly switching back and forth.
Precisely. A shared, ongoing process.
Okay, so we've gone from one-way to two-way with delay. What's the most complex view?
That would be the transactional models. These see communication as the most dynamic process. It's not just sending messages back and forth. It's a collaborative transaction. Everyone involved is actively co-creating meaning. You're building realities, shaping relationships, influencing opinions, all in real time.
And these models acknowledge context much more.
Definitely. Social context, relational context, cultural context, it all plays a huge role. And noise is still a factor, of course.
Barnlund's model sounds like it really emphasizes that real-time element.
It does. Barnlund sees it as completely circular, with constant multi-layered feedback. Everyone's input is always affecting the message. He talks a lot about cues. Public cues from the environment, private cues like our internal thoughts, and behavioral cues, the verbal and nonverbal things we do.
Can you give an example?
Sure, think about that workplace scenario. Joan mentions Independence Day, thinking July 4th. Her colleague Natalie hears Independence Day and thinks of Norway's May 17th. Without that immediate feedback, noticing the slight confusion, maybe asking a clarifying question based on cultural cues, that simple misunderstanding could linger.
Right. The transaction needs that constant adjustment.
And then there's Dance's helical model, which is visually quite interesting.
A spiral.
Yeah, the spiral. It represents communication as something that never quite repeats itself. Each interaction builds on the last one. It spirals outwards, getting more complex, accumulating shared knowledge. The insight here is that feedback isn't just a reaction in the moment. It shapes everything that comes after. We're constantly learning and refining how we communicate throughout our lives.
Like learning to talk as a baby. A cry gets attention, then a word, then sentences. Building on what worked before.
Exactly. We start simple and spiral outwards in complexity based on all our past communication experiences.
Wow, okay. So communication theory has really evolved to see things as incredibly complex and interactive, which maybe explains why people grab onto simple rules, like the 738-55 one.
Precisely. It's easy to remember. 7% words, 38% tone of voice, 55% body language. Proposed by psychologist Albert Morabian.
And it's everywhere. People quote it like it's gospel for all communication.
That's the problem. It gets vastly overgeneralized. People take it to mean words barely matter at all.
But that doesn't really hold up, does it? Like you said, why learn a foreign language if words are only 7%?
Exactly. Or why rely on a translation dictionary? Dr. Buzz Johnson made a great point.
Yeah.
If it were universally true, you should be able to understand 93% of what's going on in any foreign country just by watching and listening without knowing the language.
Which clearly isn't the case when you're trying to understand, say, complex instructions or ideas.
Right. And this is the real aha moment with Morabian's rule. People miss the context. His studies, back in 1967, were very specific. They only applied when people were communicating feelings and attitudes, like whether they liked or disliked something or someone.
And crucially,
only when the verbal message, the words, and the nonverbal cues, tone, facial expression, were inconsistent, contradictory.
okay, so it wasn't about all communication, just feelings, and only when there was a mismatch.
Exactly. In one study, people listened to words like thanks, said with different tones. When the word was positive but the tone negative, people relied more on the tone to judge the speaker's feeling. In another, people looked at photos of facial expressions while hearing the word maybe. They found the facial expression was more powerful than the tone in conveying the underlying emotion when judging feelings.
And the 73855 numbers came from combining those specific findings.
Yeah, it was a formula derived from those two experiments under those specific conditions, judging feelings when cues conflict.
Has Morabian himself clarified this?
Oh, absolutely. He's been very clear. He explicitly states on his website, and I'm paraphrasing slightly, unless you're talking about feelings or attitudes, these equations don't apply.
So it's great for figuring out how someone feels, especially if their words and body language don't line up.
Right. If someone says, I'm fine, but looks miserable, you trust the nonverbals for the feeling. But it tells you nothing about the factual content if they were explaining, say, a financial report.
And there were criticisms of the studies themselves, too.
Yes, quite a few. They were lab-based, used single recorded words, very artificial, not like real conversation.
Right.
Plus, the participants were only women in these specific studies, and they didn't even look at all nonverbal cues. Posture wasn't really part of that original 738-55 calculation.
And we know words are vital for complex stuff. Dr. Johnson's point about abstract ideas.
Absolutely, you can't gesture quantum physics. And his example of the battered woman clinging to the words, he'll change this time, despite all the contradictory actions. It shows words can have immense power, far beyond 7%, especially in established relationships.
And later research in more natural settings found different results anyway.
Yes, subsequent studies looking at nonverbal impact in more realistic situations often find different percentages or emphasize different factors, showing how much the context and method matter.
Okay, so the big takeaway isn't the exact numbers. It's not 73855 as a universal law.
Not at all.
Yeah.
The real powerful insight, drawing from Arabian and all the models we discussed, is the importance of consistency. Consistency between what you say and what your nonverbals, your tone, your body language, your expressions convey. That's where the magic or the trouble happens.
Consistency, that feels much more practical because inconsistency is where things break down.
It really is. Consistency is like the lifeblood of effective communication, whether in a big company or just one-on-one. When your words and actions align, people trust you more. The message is clearer. Everything works better.
And when they don't align,
That's when you get confusion, misunderstanding, eroding trust, maybe lower morale, even conflict. It creates static.
let's break down some of those nonverbals. Body language, for instance.
Sure. Open gestures, relaxed posture, they tend to signal trust, openness, crossed arms, fidgeting. They can read as defensive, nervous, or close off.
Facial expressions, too. The eyes apparently have it.
They really do. A genuine smile, the kind that reaches your eyes, a Duchenne smile, conveys warmth, sincerity. A forced smile often feels, well, forced, skeptical.
And eye contact. It's a tricky balance.
It is. Good, steady eye contact usually shows attentiveness, honesty. Too little can seem evasive or uninterested. Too much can feel aggressive or confrontational. It's culturally dependent, too.
Right, and personal space proxemics, that varies wildly.
Hugely. What's comfortable in one culture might feel intrusive or cold in another. Arm's length is common in many Western cultures, but much closer proximity is normal and signals warmth in parts of the Middle East or Latin America. Respecting those boundaries is key for trust.
And tone of voice? Paralanguage.
So critical. A calm, steady tone generally builds trust. High-pitched, shaky, loud, or monotonous tones can create unease or signal boredom. Volume, pitch, pace, intonation, even where you put the emphasis. It all colors the meaning of the words.
Not to mention gestures, touch, even how you're dressed or you're breathing. It all adds up.
It's the whole package.
Yeah.
And when that package sends conflicting messages, problems arise.
Like the manager saying, my door is always open, while leaning back, arms crossed, barely looking up.
Exactly. The words say one thing, the nonverbals scream the opposite. Who do you believe?
Yeah.
Usually the nonverbals. It creates uncertainty, maybe cynicism. People might not bring suggestions forward.
Or someone saying, I'm so pleased with this result, with a flat tone and a frown, doesn't feel very pleased.
Right. Those mixed signals damage credibility and effectiveness.
So for us listening now, how can we work on our own consistency?
First step is awareness. It sounds simple, but really pay attention. Maybe record yourself talking for a minute on your phone. Just listen to your tone, watch your expressions. It can be really illuminating.
Or ask for feedback.
Definitely. Ask a trusted friend or colleague. How did I come across in that meeting? Or did my tone match what I was trying to say? Be open to hearing it.
And then consciously try to align words and actions. Walk the talk.
Yes. And develop empathy. Try to think about how your nonverbals might be perceived by the other person, given their perspective or culture.
Leading by example helps too, presumably.
Always. Model the kind of authentic, consistent communication you want to see. It's about bringing your whole self, words, and actions into alignment.
Because when you achieve that consistency,
It creates a positive cycle. Consistency leads to clarity. Clarity builds authenticity. Authenticity fosters trust. Trust boosts morale. And that improves overall effectiveness.
and the opposite cycle.
Lack of consistency leads to misunderstanding and confusion. That erodes trust, which lowers morale, increases conflict risk, and tanks effectiveness. It really is foundational.
So wrapping things up, we've journeyed through these communication models from simple lines to complex transactions, and we've really unpacked the 73855 rule, debunked the myth of it being a universal law, and found its true, much narrower meaning related to feelings and inconsistency.
And the core message really isn't about precise percentages. It's about the powerful synergy between our words and our nonverbal cues. Consistency is king.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. If our nonverbal signals often leak our true feelings, perhaps more authentically than our words sometimes, how can you consciously cultivate your own nonverbal communication? How can you ensure it consistently strengthens your message, builds trust, and truly reflects your intentions, especially when you're dealing with complex ideas, not just simple feelings? Something to watch for in your next conversation.